So good morning, everyone. So today we're going to go through Little Red Book, so Xiaohongshu, also known as Red, the most powerful Chinese social app you can't ignore for today's Chinese marketing. We are very delighted to have Xiaohongshu business manager Zhang Xin to join us. He will be helping us to answer some of your questions in the Q&A session. So before this webinar, we have asked some of the attendees regarding the question they want to know the most, and also the most frequent asked question from our clients. So we have captured the most frequently asked question in the end of this webinar. And so we will take time to answer them. But throughout the webinar, we will also encourage you to send over your questions. And depending on the time, we will pick some of the questions to answer in this webinar. If not, we will answer it by email. So Dominica, if you can, do you want to start?
Absolutely. So good morning or good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to take you through half of the content this morning, and then I will move over to my co-presenter, Melody. As Melody said, we've got frequently asked questions at the end because we're asked those questions all the time. We will then endeavour to answer everything. So please do put it in the chat. I've got the chat open. We will endeavour to answer them all. If we can't within the hour, we will get back to you. We have everybody's emails we can get back to you for those that we can't answer your questions today. So please do put them in the chat. And there's no silly question. And if it is a complicated question, that's why we have Little Red Book here. It's just that we may have to come back to you tomorrow. So I don't have mouse control. So next slide, please, Melody. Fantastic. Just a little bit about who we are. Some of you are clients on this call, some of you don't know who we are. Just very quickly, we are a full service marketing agency and we only look after the China region. So we look after China consumers globally as well as in mainland China. Everything we do is about results, and hence why Little Red Book's really important to us. So we'll show you an awful lot of case studies today. And all of our clients have one thing in common. So it doesn't matter whether they are in the beauty and retail industry, whether they are in education or in property or in travel retail, we're dealing with very high ticket value sales. So even in education, for example, an MBA is a very, very expensive sale. So our job is to drive those sales with the right marketing mix. And Little Red Book is a really important part of that. We support offline activations as well. Because in China and with Chinese audiences, often online have just merged into one. It's all about experiential marketing. We will talk about that a little bit when we talk about case studies. And we work with a plethora of brands you will have heard of, such as Estee Lauder Group and World Duty Free and Stephen Webster and IKEA, and also some very niche brands in the B2B and education space as well. Next slide, please. So today, what are we going to cover? I'll be talking about, very importantly, who uses Red. So what are the clusters of customers you can target using Red? And is it right for you as a brand? Is it right for you as an organization? We will then look at top tips for successful Red campaigns, and Melody will take you through our top tips of success. We've put it in a very, very simple sort of guide format. So it's something you can take away today and put into an action straight away. I will then be going through some case studies of different categories and different clients we work with and the results we've got on Red. So you can benchmark what a good result should be on Red, because an awful lot of people come to us not expecting to get results, which is ludicrous. So we'll talk about sales, driving sales, and talk about customer service through Red as well. And then we'll open into the Q&A session. We'll try and get to the Q&A within 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes. Next slide, please. So just put quite simply, Red has had a massive growth in the last 3 years, especially since COVID. So we're looking at, just in terms of numbers, 200 million monthly active users. We are still looking at a usership that is predominantly female, but it's not 100% female, it's about 70% female. And it is the #1 search engine for Gen Z, for China's youth globally, not just within mainland China. So I'll give you an example. We were at Heathrow Airport and we were with a client a couple of weeks ago, and my staff looked on Red to get a recommendation where we should have for lunch. So literally all the decisions that are made on a daily basis are made through the Red platform. It's treated as their search engine. They're no longer using Baidu or the traditional search engines. That's very much their parents' territory. So if you're trying to target the sort of under 30s, you really are looking at Red as being the number one platform for that. And next slide, please, Modi. There is this, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's a misconception with a lot of companies that Red is just for one audience. Red is for clusters of audiences that are within that sort of 70% female, very, very high propensity of Gen Z. And it really depends on what they're looking to the platform for. So whilst you've got these clusters here, somebody may be in more than one cluster. So they might be looking, for example, for inspiration because they're going away as a family for the first time since COVID, and they're doing a trip to Europe, they're doing a trip to the US. You might be a mum, a working mum, and you are following lots of influencers within the Red platform. We'll talk about this, and you're following brands. And it's about making your life easier. It's about inspiration. Or you might be a freestyle traveler. We don't talk about it so much in this, but when I did a presentation to World Duty Free a couple of weeks ago, I think some of you on this call, we talked about freestyle travelers and nomads and about the growing number of Chinese Gen Z that will work anywhere. In fact, a number of my staff do it. We've got one working in Bali at the moment, for example. You've got those that are experience seekers. So that could be gin communities, that's the food groups, that's those that are looking for the best hotels in the world, the best pools in the world. So think Condé Nast Traveler mixed with L, and you've got a really good idea of what you can now get on Red if you're looking for travel inspiration. And then, of course, you've got shopping, and I mean all sorts of shopping. So that could be apparel, that could be accessories, that could be, I don't know, putting together an entire outfit. So it's very, very, very similar to Instagram. But one of the biggest changes we've seen in Red in the last year to 18 months is the categories being used on the platform. So I'm going to just talk about that in a second. But education and tech and experiences are the three biggest categories, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. Next slide, thanks. So just a little bit about the Red algorithm. It's not a simple algorithm any more than Google is. And it's really important to understand that there is a way of influencing that algorithm, and there is a way of making sure that your content is obviously being viewed by as many people as possible. So essentially, we've broken this down into 6 elements that the algorithm is looking at. So the algorithm is really basing itself on basically behaviors and preferences and engagement patterns of the users within the platform. So the number one part of this will be user preferences. So it takes into account past interactions, the content that you've liked and shared and saved. So think mixture of hybrid of Facebook and Instagram, but much, much, much more sophisticated. So it's serving you then content that you are going to be really engaged with. And the more you engage with certain types of content, the more you're liking, sharing and commenting, the more that content and popular trending content is going to be shown in your feed, so that it provides you with a very, very relevant content window, if you want to call it that. So for example, if you are, one of your interests is, in my case, tennis, and you're following somebody in terms of tennis fashion or in terms of tennis influencers, you'll find you'll get an awful lot of tennis related content. It's exactly the same way that we would use Instagram here in the West, but just so much more sophisticated, especially in terms of how it can drive sales, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's a dominated platform by influencers. That is how it started, how it came into being. But there is this misconception, I suppose, that the influencers are all fashion influencers. Not so. You've got education influencers on there. You've got property influencers. You've got investment influencers. You've got influencers of all sorts of categories, for hobbies, for buying your next home, for educating your child, for what books your child should read. So that whole influencer connection is kind of deep-seated and threaded throughout the whole platform without feeling contrived. It feels very real and very authentic. And I think that is partly, if not the main reason why Red has been so successful. And just, I would say the main thing that happens with Red on a very, very regular basis is it's always kept fresh. The content's always up to date. It doesn't feel dated. The platform always feels like it's right on the cutting edge of innovation. And in fact, there are a number of platforms that have been launched in the last couple of weeks in the West, one in the US, to try and mimic Little Red Book, and it's nothing like as good, I hasten to add, but there is a lot of people doing copycat channels and platforms elsewhere in the world because it's such a success. Next slide, please. So what content's being viewed? Content's grown 160%. We'll talk about what categories are trending a little bit later. But really, the biggest spread of content will be travel-related content. So that is hotels, destinations, experiences. That could be traveling for work. That could be traveling as part of your education. So there's an awful lot of brands now engaging with Little Red Book in terms of you might go and do a summer school somewhere, and then what can you do in that city? So very destination-led content is very, very popular. But then so is property, buying a home, furnishing a home, getting inspiration for your home, getting inspiration for your second home. So property and lifestyle content is really, really big. Growing number of content influencers and content with regards to relationships, dating, how to cope with being a parent, how to cope with multiple children, so twins. So you name it, it's on there. So it really is like having a magazine at your fingertips. And let's not forget food and drink. So you've got gin societies, you've got foodies, you've got best places to go in the world to eat oysters. I mean, you name it, it's on Little Red Book. And then apparel and beauty have always been on Little Red Book, and they're as strong as ever. And I would say there are more categories on there. There's sustainable beauty categories, for example. There is literally a bit like Insta, but I think a lot easier to use than Insta. You'll have an outfit that you like, you click on it and you buy it. There's none of this trying to find it on the feed. It's incredible. But there is a real growing eclectic mix now of content. It's not just fashion, apparel and beauty as it used to be. Next slide, please. So just looking at what's trending. So if you have a look at the axes, so the vertical axes going from bottom to top, so fashion, food and drink going downwards, this is the highest concentration of that content. So you've got the highest concentration of fashion and the highest concentration of food and drink and so on and so forth. But what's interesting about this chart is the growth of content. So education has grown by over 400%. There are a growing number. There's over 40 universities now using Little Red Book. There are public schools. There are education provided. There are summer schools. So it's a really, really growth category, as is anything interest related. So that is hobbies. Like, for example, glamping is massively popular on Little Red Book at the moment. Where's the best glamping sites in the world? Where to go glamping? Where to find your bit of wilderness, where to find peace and quiet. You know, you've got horse riding, every possible conceivable hobby, as well as tech. So that is, how can tech make your life easier? How to use AI, you know, robotics in your household, all sorts of things like that. Their growth has been massive. And of course, you've got fitness content and travel content, as you did before. But the reason we've highlighted this is the growth in content that didn't really exist on Red 18 months ago. Now, I think the most important thing when we get on to later on in this presentation, when we talk about driving sales, which is what we're all here for, that's what marketing should do. It's not just about awareness. What Red does is that an average Chinese consumer will need 12 touch points to make a decision, depending on what it is. But if it's certainly a high value sale, 12 points. Some might be on one platform, but majority are on different platforms. What Red does is it shortens that buying cycle considerably. And the reason it does that is it's a preference-based platform. So you are looking at real people sharing real experiences, and you're obviously going to take that with a lot more credence than you are the brand talking about themselves. So Red is partly a platform where the brand can control their voice, and it's partly a platform where your customers can be your marketing piece for you or your voice for you. So we're finding that we are shortening the customer buying journey for universities, for property, for retail, for beauty, for fashion, for food and drink, quite considerably, because of the nature of the platform is there to say, I have bought this in this development and I love it. I have been to this hotel and it's amazing. So it's very, very customer centric, what we call KOC led. And that is having a massive, massive difference on, say, for example, the typical search engine journey or the typical programmatic journey, where they're going to need to see and hear from customers in order to make that decision. So that's the key difference really between Red and other channels. Next slide, please. And over to you, Melody. I'll go on mute for a bit.
Thank you. So I'm now going to go through some of the top tips to how to run a successful Red campaigns. So first of all, this is really critical. Content is key for the success for your Red marketing campaign. It needs to deliver value. It's not just for very informative content. You need to deliver inspiration to your audience. The biggest reason why is that is 81% of users, they actually feel they want to buy something. They actually have that trigger of desire to purchase product after seeing a really resonating Red content. So this is critical for us. And what's also very interesting to know is Red, the content is has a longer lifespan than WeChat. So Red's content can last about a month. They will still be popular. If it's a highly engaged content, you can still see that content kind of being recommended by Red. In comparison, if we talk about WeChat content, normally is to distribute to the existing audience, and normally lifespan is shorter than a week. So doing a really impressive Red content, really engaging Red content will help you have a longer and exposure to your target audience. The other useful thing to know when you create Red content, authenticity and also personalized content is really important. What we find is if you do very beautiful professional shots, people don't engage with it. It looks too much like a brand promotion. They want to see real persons showcasing real life items or real life experience. So something to think about when you are creating Red content, make it authentic, make it personal. Also, when you're publishing Red content, try to optimize your cover photos. Cover photo and headlights are the number one reason people want to click through and look at your content. If you can grab people's attention in such a short space of time, then you are pretty much half of success of your content creation. One thing to know is definitely you need to test different headline message, different cover photos. Don't be afraid of testing, because you might find different combination of photos and also headlines might help you to create the most engaging content. And then you can continue to create similar content in the future. One top tip is look at similar brands or competitors. If you see they have really amazing content with high engagement, try to emulate their content format, because that will already help you to achieve half of the success of the content creation. The other thing to note is content you need to avoid using any forbidden words for Red. It's really a massive no-no if you use words like the best, the most. I think it's applicable to all the China media. Is they don't like you using anything that's like my kind of like not true. So you definitely need to double check when you create content. Don't use any words that's too extreme. So that's the key content, and also number one tips. So making your content work for you is key. We touched on earlier about Red being a search engine for Chinese youth, so millennial and Gen Z audience. they no longer use the traditional Baidu or Google to search like where to eat, to search where to study, where to travel. Now Red is becoming one of the top search engine. And you can see that from the top search keyword list on Red. And so for brands, you need to make sure your content, when you create content, you know what's the most search keywords, and then you make sure you optimize your content with some of the keywords within it. That will help you to increase your visibility to your target audience. Again, it's really important because 90% of Red users, they use Red as a search engine before making a purchasing decision. So Red is almost like a reviewing channel. They look at what people recommended, what's the experience of using certain products. So again, really important to have that almost like a search engine optimization practice into your Red content. The tip number 3, so leverage key opinion leaders and key opinion consumers. So influencer campaign strategy is critical. We talk about Red algorithm. You can look at it in a simple technique. Red will give more visibility to certain content if there's higher engagement, if the content has more search keyword into it. So for a new brand entering Red, what's the quickest way to get visibility is to work with influencers, because they already have high followings and also their content are likely to have a high engagement rate. So by working with them, you are able to help your brand to reach out more audience. So the KOL strategy is very complex because Red has different type of KOL, from micro KOL to your own consumers. So we often work with education clients or travel clients to work with their existing customer or alumni to help creating content for them, because they are really authentic. And also you can use Red to engage with really high profile, like millions followers KOL. Again, that will have a higher price tag. Very helpfully, Red has a KOL platform called Pugoing, which will give you, you can search on the type of KOL you are looking for. They will provide you a list as well as the kind of roughly price for working with those KOLs. So that's one way client might want to start with, is to look at going to search on potential KOL. Sometimes you can just look at using monitoring tools such as Qiangua, which is the Red's own monitoring tool, to do some social listening, which will help you to also identify some of the potential KOL and KOCs that you can work with. We will probably have a separate section for the KOL strategy because it's complex. If you're really interested in know more about how to leverage the right KOLs at the right budget and to achieve your objective, please feel free to get in touch with us in the end of the webinar. Top tip number 4. So definitely try to do some incentivized campaigns. Either it's providing a great experience or it's some sort of giveaway. It works really well for Red, especially as a new brand entering Red channel, to have a launch campaign to quite quickly grab people's attention. Red does give a certain amount of visibility for a new channel to post their first Red content. So it's something you should take advantage of. How we find out what works really well is something like a lucky draw of giveaway that will actually increase your followers. Maybe initially you might get people to come to join the lucky draw just for the product, but because your content will start getting lots of tractions, you'll gradually see you are attracting your target audience into your Red account. The other good thing about providing this incentivized campaign or experience to your audience is it's also a very effective way to drive footfall to your stores. So you can encourage your user to checking into your offline store in return of certain experience or gift, and then they will be able to like leverage that and share with their friends and families. So more people will see the content and more people come to your store. So this is a really good way to drive footfalls for retail clients, for example, or a travel client. So this is one of the example we found. It's a tea company called Chaji. They opened a new store in Shanghai, and they want to embrace this kind of like the busy lifestyle of everyday like female workers. They also want to achieve some sort of relaxation after working. So they invite people to go to their tea bar in Shanghai new store, and they incentivize people to check in order to enjoy a kind of amazing new tea way of life within their store. And this was pretty successful in really engaging campaign on Little Red Book. So when you talk about Red, you can't ignore is how to generate sales on Red. This is not for everyone because when we look at who's using Red to sell products, Red does have their own Red e-commerce store available, function available for brands, but not all the brands are using it. Certain large brands like Adidas, they don't really have Red store because they already have very well-established channels, distributor channels in China. Red store is particularly useful for brands that's really niche, and maybe they are quite early on in the China entry and e-commerce strategy. They want to test water in China e-commerce landscape. Because Red store does have a lower entry point, they allowed cross-border e-commerce and also like overseas shipping product to customers. So for a smaller brand, very niche, if they want to test the water, Red could be one cost-effective option to engage with their consumers. The other thing important to know, you do need to have good brand mentions, good kind of level of brand mentions on Red already in order to generate that traction on the e-commerce store. So yeah, looking at what sort of pros and cons of Red, whether Red store is for you, it's quite important. What we found is when users using Red, when they see the product they like, around 70% of users will go to the brand Tmall store to have a look at the product to buy. So the later on kind of engagement with user to buy is really important. So if you do have a very robust e-commerce strategy, make sure when you utilize Red, you also activate all your e-commerce channels, whether it's on Tmall, JD.com, WeChat store. That will be a great way to help boosting your sales on those e-commerce marketplace. This is one example. Bowling Web is one of our clients. They are a luxury males racer brand, very high, like design-driven, very polished. They have a very good Red presence, and so they leverage the Red store within Red ecosystem, which help users to purchase product without having the need to leave the platform. So it's a very seamless journey from discovering the product to purchase. The final tip, number 6, is utilize the tool to do social listening. I touched on this earlier. Red has a monitor tool called Qiangua, which allow you to monitor not just your own brand mentions, as well as your competitors' brand mentions. It's a really good way to discover trending keywords that you can utilize in order to refine your product promotion strategy, and also help you to identify potential key opinion leaders or key opinion consumer to work with you, because you might find it's already a Red user is already like the biggest advocate of your brand. They've been talking about your brand and also have good following. So this is something brands should consider utilizing, not just for your own marketing intelligence, but also to look at competitive analysis and also discovering influencers to work with. So I'll leave the next session with Dominica.
Thank you very much. And I am conscious we've got a couple of questions and we will endeavour to get them answered at the end, or unless I can get them answered now, I will try. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the different industries that we tend to work with the most on Red and how it kind of works in terms of different types of, I suppose, strategy, is destination marketing and education. So interestingly, one of the questions we just had about education was about creating experiences, and that is kind of the point for the universities or schools that we work with on Little Red Book. We are doing exactly that. We are treating it as a destination. We are creating lots of content, video, influencer-led, and also student ambassador-led content that's around building that university as a destination of choice, because it's about the experience and not just about the degree or the postgrad that you're going to get at the end of it. So content marketing to drive brand visibility is really, really important in destination marketing and education, and as is KOL campaigns to drive interest and footfall. And as Melody said, it's about choosing the right KOL, the right KOC, that is going to match your brand, but also is going to create an authentic voice. And with all the KOLs we work with, we are co-creating that content with them to ensure that the brand's protected, but more importantly, it's going to actually drive the intent that we want for universities and destination clients that we're working with. When you're talking about retail, it's much more about triggering purchase intent. And in fact, one of the questions we've had, Melody, is about the difference between Little Red Book and Tmall sales. And one of the things that I would say, just to reiterate what Melody said, is Little Red Book is brilliant when you're a niche brand and you're new to e-commerce in China. And it's a good place to start. But if you are selling a lot of SKUs and you're selling a lot of products, you're going to need another channel as well as part of your e-com mix. So I'm happy to take that question offline because there's a lot to talk about. But with retail related content on Red, it's all about driving e-commerce sales. So that could be directly into Little Red Book where you have a store, or that could be driving intent for them to buy from you on JD, from Tmall, or even from your own store. But most of the e-commerce sales in China are on Chinese platforms. Whereas when you look at property, it's about stimulating desire. It's about creating content and an environment where your development is seen as a destination in its own right. So we spend a lot of time talking about with KOLs, this is what the transport links are like, this is what it's like to live here, this is what the leisure facilities are. So you create an actual environment, much the same way that you would, in a way, promote a hotel. And we like to use customers as well. Certainly when we've done work for property developers, it's been really successful. It's a mixture of KOLs as well as KOCs, so key opinion consumers or customers, so they can talk about their experience of actually living in that development. So just to give you some examples of some of those, which might give it a little bit more context. Next slide, please. So Chatsworth House destination in Derbyshire, absolutely beautiful stately home, still lived in actually by the Duke and Duchess, very similar to where Downton Abbey is shot in terms of its kind of stature, amazing grounds. And we took on Chatsworth as a client maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And interestingly, Red is a relatively new platform for them. We historically were using Weibo, obviously WeChat and other channels. And our job with Chatsworth is to drive brand awareness of Chatsworth House to domiciled Chinese in the UK, those studying here and those travelling here. We recently opened a Little Red Book account for them. And as you can imagine, Chatsworth House we're very lucky. It's a very stunning property. It's a wonderful place to go visit. Do go visit. I spend quite a lot of time up there. It's one of my accounts. And essentially within just 1 week, we managed to get 50,000 views, which is incredible. So if you get the content right and you understand the audience, Little Red Book can be incredible for brand awareness. And they gained 4,000 followers in just 1 week on the Little Red Book account. We're very lucky. They have stunning photography. We have stunning video that we shot with them just a couple of years ago with Chinese KOL, and we're now using KOLs with them. So as destinations, Little Red Book is absolutely perfect. and that drives intent, and that has driven Chinese visitors, and that's where they make their revenue from. Next slide, please. So Hemswell Antique Centres. So Hemswell is a really interesting example. Hemswell is the largest antique centre in Europe. I was up there a couple of weeks ago. We're talking thousands of square feet, 5 buildings of just about every antique you can imagine from the last 250 years, everything from war antiquities to kids antiques to jewelry to furniture. And they approached us. I've known the founder for some time, and we've done some work for them pre-COVID. And they wanted to attract Chinese antique buyers and art dealers. Now, you can't get much more niche than that. And given that this is essentially in the middle of Lincolnshire Fields, it's beautiful, but not that easy to get to. The nearest place is Lincoln Station, which is half an hour away. It was a little bit of a tall ask, but obviously we rose to the challenge. We launched on Little Red Book. It's been phenomenally successful. And when I was up there and we were shooting a KOL campaign a couple of weeks ago, there were people just walking in, and there was a Chinese a group that walked in, and we asked who they were, and they were interior designers. They'd flown in from Shenzhen, and they were on a buying trip in Europe, and they'd seen Little Red Book Hemswell content, and they knew that this was the place. When we were there, the Game of Thrones production team were there. So it's become a real destination of choice for antique buyers, but the results have been phenomenal. So not only have we had an increase in their web traffic and 5,000 engagements on Little Red Book, some might say, well, so what? They have had more sales from the Chinese market than they've ever had, and we've only been live for 3.5 months. So even some of the most niche industries, it's just about how you put forward that content, how you create it as a destination. And the last KOL campaign we shot, which isn't live yet, it will be live next week, the week after next, was very much, we had 2 very different KOLs. One is an art collector, and the other one was literally just going around all of the various buildings and showing the different eclectic mix of antiques, and that was very much the antiques market. But really, really successful campaign, and we're only using predominantly Little Red Book at the moment for them. Next slide, please. Stephen Webster, very, very upmarket niche jewelry brand based in Mount Street, but also have a store in Shanghai. And Little Red Book's been really, really successful at driving brand awareness to not only the London store, but to encourage visitors and shoppers for the Shanghai store as well. And again, it's a very, very different approach because it's very, very beautiful jewelry. We are using influencers to promote that. In fact, we had a launch at their store last week that was very successful using Chinese influencers, and all of that content will be going out on Red late this week, early next week. Cheval collection, I think we may have somebody on this call. So one of our clients, they're basically long stay apartments, luxury apartments, beautiful in London, Edinburgh, and now Dubai. Again, it's about creating a destination. It's about wanting to go and visit. So we've done a lot of content around what you can do in 3 days in London. And we've done a lot of pivoting, especially since COVID, especially when the borders were shut before January the 8th, of targeting domiciled Chinese to come and visit London or Edinburgh and now Dubai for short stays. So we've moved from B2B corporate bookings to B2C. So we now do both. And it's had a demonstrable, I'm not going to say how much because it would be inappropriate, but a demonstrable gain in terms of sales in 2022 just from the domiciled market, because we've moved towards lifestyle content on Red, and we're not just on Weibo and WeChat as channels of choice. One Crown Place property developer, and beautiful. I mean, we did a KOL shoot with them. This was back in March, and to launch their penthouse suite. So they're jewel in the crown, really, really successful. They sold a couple of apartments based on that one KOL influencer campaign that went out on Red. Again, we created a whole destination piece. We interviewed the interior designer Sophie Ashworth. We had brought some KOLs down for the day. We shot video, we shot stills. We talked about what it's like to live there. We interviewed some customers. You kind of get the gist. So it's really about creating a destination. And coming back to that question about education, this is what you do with universities as well. We very much engage with all of our universities at the outset. We engage with ambassadors. And if there aren't any, we will insist that the university selects some, and we help curate that content, alumni, industry, as well as parents and prospective students. And we create destinations on Red. Whereas with Weibo, with Little Red Book, with Douyin and Bilibili, because we use all of those channels for universities, they all have a different part to play. Little Red Book's part to play is very much about creating experiences as a destination. So, for example, if you're a university with a campus with a lot of space, then we will be focusing on not just what it's like to study within that campus, but what it's like what that campus is like, and we will shoot that campus. We recently did that for Stirling. So it really does depend on your university. So I'm happy to take this offline and have a chat with you about it. Next slide. We're moving on to Q&A. Melody, I've got a couple of questions from the audience. So if we just do the frequently asked questions first, because these are the questions our clients ask us the most. So we thought we'd put these in here first. Over to you.
So we're going to, because of the time and the language differences, we're going to have a live Q&A with Red's representative, Zhang Xin. So I'm going to do a live interpreting section with the Q&A session. So 张欣，你可以那个，对，好，谢谢。第一个问题我们想要问你的，你可以用中文回答，然后我再翻译给当下的那个 attendees。我想请问一下，使用海外自制跟中国自制来建立小红书，在运营上面和功能上面有没有什么区别？
这一块的话，目前功能上面和运营上面其实是没有任何区别的，只是说针对海外客户的话，比如说做一些房地产公司以及地产租赁这样的一些客户是没有办法用广告形式去做一些推广，以及涉及教育类的客户的话，推广18岁以下的用户人群也是没有办法进行投放的。
好的，了解，那我就翻译一下。
好的。
So thank you, Zhang Xin. He just say basically there's no differences between setting out Little Red Book through your China entity or overseas entity. This is actually one of the really frequently asked questions from our clients. The only potential biggest differences is in the promotion, especially when you are talking about property clients or rental accommodation clients. There's a restriction on promotion using Little Red Book. And also for education clients, you can't promote to a user that's under 18. So universities are fine, but certain category or certain education institution will have restriction on promotion under 18 of Red user. 好，谢谢张欣我们换到下一个问题。OK， 这个也是我们客户常会问到问题，因为我们客户的资源有限，所以他们可能想知道要怎么样，他的这个频次在小红书上面的这个笔记推广的频次发送频次、发布内容的频次，你建议是会在多少之内？
如果就是没有太多人力的情况下的话，建议每周保持最少3篇笔记的更新就好。
Thank you, Zhang Xin. So again, a very frequently asked question by our clients, because we mentioned about how important content creation on Little Red Book is, and quite often clients don't have the resource to create that content. But we also want to make sure you maintain high visibility on Little Red Book. Zhang Xin's recommendation is the minimum you should try to maintain is 3 posts per week, if possible. So that will help you to maintain good visibility and engagement with your Red audience. 好的，第3个问题 就是小红书现在目前不准许外部连接，你会怎么样建议如何将用户连接到客户的一些销售方式，或者是下一个就是做的 action 的最佳方式是什么？
好的。小红书目前的话，它针对客户，它其实是有2种形式。一种的话就是针对于有自身的一些 APP 或者是有官网这样的客户，其实是可以通过广告的形式申请去开通外链，然后跳转到我们的 APP 下载页或者是我们网站的首页。如果说没有网站或者是 APP 这样的客户的话，我们建议通过投放引导用户到自己的私域，然后微信去做营销。对，因为目前针对在投放客户的话，私信导流到微信其实是账号不被任何限制的。
OK， 好的，感谢张鑫。So this is one of we often encounter a situation when you do your promotion content, you are unable to insert external links on Literary Book. Zhang Xin has recommended there's 2 ways. So if you have app download page, you should be able to use promotional ads to link to your app download or your website. But if you don't have, then he recommends to drive user to your private message and then drive them to your Weixin, WeChat customer service function in order to move user to the next funnel. So with the private message audience, they don't have any restriction on that. OK， 第4个问题，张鑫，
好的。
除了是小红书，它除了可以针对中国用户做推广之外，还有哪些国家我们也可以做推广？
目前我们有马来西亚、美国、新加坡、澳大利亚、加拿大、日本、英国、韩国、越南、意大利以及泰国这几个国家，它其实都有小红书用户的。
好的，感谢。So I think this is a really interesting one. There's a lot of Chinese users outside of China. They are using Little Red Book. The top countries are used like having overseas Chinese using Little Red Book are Malaysia, America, Singapore, Australia, and Canada. And there's also like other countries like Japan, UK, Korea, Vietnam, and Thailand and Italy. They have users in those countries. Actually, one thing I was discussing with Zhang Xin is you are able to buy the target audience from those countries, so you can do very precise targeting if you want to reach out to those audience outside of China. So that if you are interested in doing that, let us know that they do have an audience package that you can purchase for promotion purpose. 好的，最后一个问题，张鑫，对于旅游和酒店品牌，他们可以用哪些策略来提高他们在小红书上面的知名度？
因为小红书本身它是一个种草平台嘛，所以我们还是需要通过一些内容种草来打造品牌知名度。这个内容的话，可以就是由品牌自己的企业账号去发布的，比如说可以去发布一些旅游攻略分享，以及我们的旅游相关的一些生活上的有趣的事情，以及我们酒店防踩坑的一些科普，还有酒店的服务、环境设施、价格这样的一些内容来作为分享，让我们的用户了解我们的旅游品牌或者是酒店品牌。
好，谢谢。So for travel and hospitality brands, using Little Red Book it's a very content-led platform. So in order to build awareness, the brand need to utilize their own content by creating something like the travel guide or anything that's really fun and interesting, unique selling points that you have for your destination or your brand, including your services, your environment, facility, and pricing. These are the really popular content that Red users are very likely to share and spread on Little Red Book. So it could be a very good way to stimulate demand for your brand. 感谢张欣。
不用客气，不用客气。
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Mandy.
Yeah, I think we have a couple questions that we can also answer on this webinar. 张欣，我们这里其实有2个，就是现场的人问的2个问题。
好的。
这边可以帮我回答一点我现在也是问你一下。
好的，好的。
So I'm just going to ask Little Red Book on the 2 questions.
Yeah.
So 第一个问题呢是有关于其实就是在场其实有一些有在想要做小红书 e-commerce 的品牌，他们想要知道小红书的这个店面跟就是 Tmall 有什么样最大的差别，销售在上面有什么样的差别，你有没有什么想法？
是说的另外一个 APP 吗？
对，就是小红书的商店跟 Tmall 的店的销售。天
猫吗？
天猫，对，天猫。
是这样的，就是小红书的话，本身来说，我们其实是作为一个内容种草的平台。虽然小红书现在有在大力的发展电商这个板块其实我们更多的还是以品牌在小红书去做一些内容营销，去引导用户决策的形式，可以引流到我们的天猫，或者是在小红书站内去做一个转化。天猫的话，它本身是一个非常大的一个电商平台嘛，它的一个用户也非常多，用户的习惯呢，其实更多的也是比如说在天猫看到某一个产品，它可以反过来通过搜索小红书去看一下有没有关于这个产品之前使用过的一些用户的体验呀，或者是攻略类型的东西，再去决定要不要到天猫去实现一个购买。
OK，
大概是这样的一个逻辑。
好，谢谢。So I'm just asking question about the sales differences between Little Red Book eShop versus Tmall Global. I think Zhang Xin has emphasized, to be honest, Little Red Book still a very content-driven, lifestyle-driven, and also supporting people to make purchase decision kind of tool. They are a platform helping people to make decisions. That's kind of the core objective of the Little Red Book Xiaohongshu platform. So the sales generated a lot of sales actually. When people go to Tmall, they look at the products they want to buy, but they will also check on Little Red Book to see customers review. So they actually complementing each other. So Little Red Book can help making the decision. Even though Little Red Book has their own shops, but because Tmall has lots of traffic, a lot of users will still purchase in Tmall. But Tmall, before they made the purchase on Tmall, they will always come to Little Red Book to just to reconfirm they made the right decision by looking at other users' review. So I think that the kind of user flow is like that. In regards to the kind of setup for the Little Red Book stores versus Tmall store, Little Red Book store has a slightly less restriction on the kind of upfront cost of setting up the store. So Tmall store, you have lots of upfront costs because it's a very expensive, quite a complex process. You have to work with the TP to set it up. You have upfront costs, and also they charge quite a high platform fee. In comparison, Little Red Book doesn't have that initial high cost to set up. As a result, we say it could be a good way to test the water before you enter China to like fully embrace the e-commerce landscape in China. But yeah, the audience on Little Red Book will be a bit smaller than Tmall, so you won't have that traffic as you see on Tmall. So I think the main difference will be these two.
Can I just answer something? Because we've had quite a few questions about e-com. And what I would say, Jessica and Douglas, who've asked particularly about e-com, is it also depends on your category. So if you've got lots and lots and lots of SKUs, you've got no choice but to have a main e-commerce platform. And Little Red Book, maybe for your hero products, is a very, very good way. And for those that need a lot of explanation or reviews. But with a very niche product, like when we work with Bolin and Webb, Little Red Book in its entirety they're also on Tmall, but that is also working really, really well because it's a very niche product. So what I would say is we're going to put our email addresses at the end of this deck in a second. Please do reach out and we can have a separate conversation because I've got no idea what categories you're in. And that will make a really big difference to the answer and what we suggest. And I'm conscious it's a bit of a longer answer for some of you. There's one more question on here, Melody, just about experiences and incentives for the education sector. I touched a bit on it, but
yeah, we did, and I think the best way to kind of create the experiences. Again, I'm not sure which education institution you're representing, because different universities, they have different surrounding environment that's really attractive to Chinese. Quite often we treat education, when we use Little Red Book, we treat university almost like a destination marketing, because you are selling the full package, not just the education, but also the experience of living in that environment. So it will be useful to know, because we often recommend university clients to utilize their existing students or alumni to actually experience the surrounding areas, the beauty, whether you have a really attractive place to visit that will really entice Chinese to visit that place, and just do a real life video content, and then share on social media, share on Little Red Book is really powerful, because nowadays a lot of students, especially after COVID, they experiencing 3 years lockdown. They want to travel outside for the experiences, not just for the academic success. They actually want to enrich their life.
Thank you to everybody who has attended today from both China and UK. It's been lovely to have you with us. If you would like help to either set up your verified Little Red Book account, or you are looking for an agency or a partner to work with you to make your account not only a lot more searchable, but to actually drive leads and inquiries by creating meaningful content and influencer programs, look no further. Please do contact us on info@emergingcoms.com. If you download this QR code, you will find a lot of guides on our current website, such as Gen Z Guide, Influencer Guide, a guide on Little Red Book. We are shortly to publish one on Bilibili and Douyin as well. So please go to our site for further information, and please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I do a lot of posts about trends to do with Chinese consumers and anything you need to know for each of the categories we discussed today. So thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate it. Any questions, please don't hesitate. Please reach out, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.